Caution. The AJ and Quill show contains D&D content and is intended for a D&D audience. And, besides that, they're really weird. Hi everyone, welcome to Meta Adjacent, Player University, and your stop for Monster Tactics in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Professor AJ, and with me as always is my fearless companion, Quill the Dragon. Say hi, Quill.
Greetings, puny humans. Prepare to absorb the knowledge Quill will dispense with his mighty jaws.
Now, we've been covering a series that are highlighting all the monsters and creatures you can encounter inside the new adventure, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, released from Dungeons & Dragons.
With the adventure actually out now, we're excited to be able to play it with our players.
And as a special treat, the designers put in a whole bunch of characters from the 1980s toy series and cartoon line. Well, that bell means that class has started. Pull out your notebooks and let's get going. Now, inside The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the journey for the safe return of your treasured possession has led you back to the Witchlight Carnival. A spectacular event of games and music and food and friendship. However, strange things are afoot, and it's up to you to find out what they are and who is behind them.
Along the way, you're going to encounter some classic, nostalgic characters from the 1980s toy line and cartoon series. So out of nostalgia and pure awesomeness, we've decided to cover those characters for the next few weeks.
But let's not waste any more time.
So, what are we covering today?
Today, we're covering Kelek, the Mad Sorcerer. But let's see what the book actually has to say about this character. Kelek is a greedy, narcissistic sociopath who revels in chaos, but is a coward at heart. The fact that he's highly intelligent makes him even more dangerous. More than anything, he wants the staff of power that's in the possession of his most hated foe, Ringlerun. For his alignment, Kelek is chaotic evil. His personality trait is,
all who hear my name should tremble in fear.
His ideal is,
kindness? That's just another word for weakness.
His bond,
I must have Ringlerun's staff. With it, the League of Malevolence will be unstoppable.
And his flaw,
I trust no one, nor am I trustworthy.
Well, we've seen the flavor text, but let's look at their stats. Kelek is a medium human sorcerer, and he's chaotic evil. He has an AC of 12 with bracers of defense, and 78 hit dice, and he has a walking speed of 30 feet. He's proficient in con and charisma saving throws, he has proficiency in deception and intimidation, and he speaks common, draconic, and elvish.
Now, like many of these reimagined characters, Kelek does have some special equipment.
Right, this is meant to represent that they were an adventuring party and they have since collected their own magic items. For Kelek, he wears braces of defense, which is displayed in his armor class, and he has a staff of striking. He has a multi-attack, he can cast spells, he can use his staff, and he also has a reaction called Arcane Defense, which is essentially the shield spell. That's super cool. I love seeing these classic 1980s toy and cartoon series characters brought back.
Although this isn't the first time these characters have been reimagined inside Dungeons & Dragons.
And while the book does have some great information, let's see what the book isn't telling you. Now, these characters all appeared first in the Shady Dragon Inn supplement back in 1983.
They also appeared in the released adventure called The Quest for the Heartstone.
Now, Kelek is an evil wizard who appeared in the Quest for Heartstone. Inside the lore, Kelek hired Warduke to kill Strongheart.
Kelek appeared as a pre-generated character in the Shady Dragon Inn supplement back in 1983.
He again appeared as a pre-generated character in the Quest for the Heartstone in 1984. Now, Kelek appeared in an episode of the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series called The Valley of the Unicorns. He's depicted as a reluctant underling Avenger, the main villain of that series. He seeks to steal the power of teleportation from unicorns, so that he may become Venger's master. Alright, this guy really has a thing for unicorns.
Maybe he's an Equestical.
The hero children of the series defeat Kelek by alerting Venger to Kelek's plans, resulting in a duel between the two, and ultimately Kelek loses.
Kelek also appeared in the Marvel book storybooks. The Forest of Enchantment in 1983, where he was aided in his evil plans by Warduke, and in another adventure that same year called The Treasure of Time, where he sought to steal the titular treasure for himself.
In 1984, Kelek also appeared in the kid stuff books called Attack of the Assassins, where at the beheading of Warduke, he hired the assassin Zargash to slay Strongheart.
So many people out to get each other. It's like watching an episode of The Bachelor.
Now, you can find the original stats for them online. Kelek stands 5'11" and weighs 156 pounds. His head is clean-shaven, his beard is white and full, and his eyes are dark. His robe is black. Kelek wants to be the High Wizard of his magical school. Once, he and the wizard Ringlerun were friends, but the Heartstone made Kelek power-hungry and evil. Now he uses his magical powers to gain power and wealth, and he hates Ringlerun, who stands in his way. Kelek gloats that Ringlerun's old helper Skylla has become his partner. Although he uses Skylla's powers, he does not plan to share power with her once he is High Wizard. He will destroy her just as he intends to destroy Ringlerun. Now, I love the nostalgia. This is super cool. I love that they're bringing back these 1980s characters because I grew up in the 80s. But let's put it all together. Let's see how they behave in combat.
Now the game designers did something really inventive with these characters. They gave combat tips.
Right, this doesn't really happen all that often. Sometimes in the flavor text they give a little bit, but they're actually giving specific ideas on how these characters should behave in combat. So let's review them. Now, Kelek uses arcane defense to bolster his low armor class whenever possible. And his challenge rating is a reflection of the likelihood that he will use Fiery Explosion as often as he can. If one or more of his allies gets caught in the blast, well, so be it. Now, with Kelek, his primary attack is going to be his Fiery Explosion.
It's basically a fireball.
And he's going to use it first and whenever it recharges.
Now if you look at the Monsters in Area effect table inside the Dungeon Master's Guide, you can see that he's going to want to try to get at least 4 enemies inside that blast.
Right. However, it does say in the flavor text that he doesn't care if that blast radius also happens to include any of his allies.
So blast away.
Now, when we look at Kelek, you can see that his primary offensive ability is going to be his Charisma.
Although in the lore he was described as a wizard, he's been since updated to a sorcerer.
Right, and that kind of makes more sense for this character. Now, his primary defensive stat is going to be his Constitution, especially since he basically has no dexterity. Now, this gives him the combat profile of a support caster.
But the thing with sorcerers is they're almost always shown that way, but they tend to be better blasters.
Right, sorcerers typically do a much better job being DPS casters. Now, even though he has basically no dexterity, we're still going to say that he tries to avoid damage rather than absorbing it. And he's going to do that using his arcane defense ability. Now in combat, the first thing Kelek is always going to do is cast his Fiery Explosion.
And anytime this ability recharges, he will cast it again.
Right, if this ability is available, this is going to be his primary thing he wants to do. Now, Kelek also has a multi-attack. With it, Kelek can make 3 attacks using his Sorcerer's Bolt and Staff of Striking, or a combination of them together.
It also says he can replace one of these attacks with his spell casting.
Now, that's super cool. Basically, he's going to multi-attack when he's not casting his Fiery Explosion. Now, with that multi-attack, he's almost always going to cast 2 Sorcerer's Bolts and 1 spell.
The Staff of Striking is going to be reserved if he's engaged in melee combat, and he can't escape.
Right, in that case, he's just going to wail on them with his staff and then run away. Now, we're saying that Kelek is a caster DPS. This means that, tactically, he's going to want to stay as far away from the front line of combat as possible. And if you look at his spells, you can see that his Sorcerer's Bolt has a range of 60 feet. This is how far Kelek should be staying away.
At that distance, he should also be trying to stay behind as much cover as possible.
Right, now from distance and behind cover, he's going to cast damaging spells into combat. Now with his multi-attack, he's going to cast his Sorcerer's Bolt twice and then cast a spell. Now when you look at his spells, there's not a lot of combat spells inside here, but there are some good ones. On the first round, where he's casting a spell with his multi-attack, he's going to cast the Fly spell, if it's available.
The Fly spell lets you fly 60 feet. And if you'll notice, that's the same distance as the range on his Sorcerer's Bolt.
Right, if he has the Fly spell active, Kelek would fly straight up into the air 60 feet and simply cast spells into combat from the air. Flight is too good of an advantage simply to give up.
On the second round with his multi-attack, he would attack with his Sorcerer's Bolt twice and cast the Web spell.
Right, Web is a great spell to cast against enemies, and exactly like his Fire Explosion, he's not going to care if he catches his allies in the radius of the web either.
Now, if Kelek is ever hit in combat, he uses his reaction to cast Arcane Defense.
Right, now Arcane Defense is essentially the shield spell, but this is something that you should not save. We're going to call this a standing decision. This means that you just do it automatically without thinking about it. So, whenever Kelek is hit in combat by an attack, he's going to use his Arcane Defense, period.
Don't save this ability. There's no point.
And that's basically it. These are his combat tactics. But something that's important to note is that Kelek, 1, values his own life very, very much, and 2, is a coward.
Because of this, we're going to say that Kelek suffers a morale failure and flees from combat when he suffers enough damage.
Now, how much is enough damage? Usually we say once a creature gets down to 1/4 of its total hit points, it suffers a morale failure and flees combat. But Kelek is a notable coward, so instead we're going to say once Kelek becomes bloodied.
That's a 4th edition term meaning half your hit points.
Right, so once he reaches half his hit points, that's when he's going to suffer a morale failure and try to flee combat.
He does so using the dash action.
Right, and when he does so, if he has either his web spell or flight available, he'll use those to help him out. And that's about it. That's all the information you're going to need to get started using this character inside your Wild Beyond the Witchlight adventure.
We hope you have fun using them, as much fun as we had talking about them.
Right, they're fun, they're nostalgic. I had a really great moment when I saw that they were bringing these characters back. So hopefully you get to enjoy them. And if you're new to Dungeons & Dragons and you have no idea who these people are, you're going to have a great time.
And we hope that you tune in next time.
Right, have a good one out there. We love all you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, get vaccinated, and is it time for school yet? Have a good one.
Bye.
Yeah, 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 yeah.